just general.
Yeah, it's just grateful to have health and be happy. And yeah, there's a lot of craziness going on in the world. So it's always a good idea to look at the things we're grateful for. So welcome to our annual OLCC review class. And I know that most of you that work in the tasting rooms have taken the OLCC class, but this is just to kind of go over those things again, keep them fresh in our minds, because your permit, you go 5 years without it. So if there's updates from the OLCC, I give them to you here. And we just really discuss how to cut people off. It's the least fun part of our job. So we really have to get together as a team and talk about it every year, because it is something that can put us out of business. It's a huge thing. It's a huge liability. And the laws are not necessarily fair, but we have to know them and abide by them at all times so that we can continue having beautiful spaces to welcome people to make memories. And don't forget, you cannot make memories if you don't remember. So we want to stay sober enough to make good memories. That's what we're talking about today. So we'll talk a little about the laws. We're going to go over some fines, because it's always, a little daunting to look at those numbers. We're going to talk about what your responsibility is in the tasting room, checking IDs. So we'll look over some of those IDs. There were some updates a couple years ago to some Oregon and Washington state IDs and things to look for. We're going to talk about your OLCC logbook, bachelorette parties. We'll have a little story time, and then we'll do a little Q&A. And you'll get to hear from all of our beautiful panelists today. Thank you so much for joining me and helping me talk about this kind of least favorite part of our job, but something that's very important. So we'll start with the good faith effort law. So this is part of your thing. You hear it in your training when you get your permit. You must not knowingly allow a person to drink or continue to consume alcohol after you have observed that they are intoxicated. It does not matter if the person is driving or not. Oh my gosh, I hear this all the time. Well, we have a taxi, we have a designated driver. Like, oh, I am so happy that you have a designated driver. That doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter. I can't continue to serve you into oblivion because someone will drive you home. And that's not what we want. We've all been there where we would have wished someone at that stupid bar would have cut us off so we didn't feel so gross the next morning. So think about it from that perspective as well. And again, to reiterate, if a guest has been cut off, even a member, especially a member, they cannot leave the premises with wine. This is such a huge part of it, you guys. If they're there to pick up their pickup, I talked to Karina about it just recently as well. We will ship them their wine for free, or you can walk it to their hotel. I know that actually in Seaside, we've done that a couple of times for members that we really care about, but you absolutely cannot let them leave the building with wine. If someone gets pulled over and they've got 8 pickup, 2 years worth of pickups in the back of their trunk and they've been overserved, or they went to a bar somewhere else, it doesn't look good. It's just not good. Karina, why do we do this? Will you talk about why this is so important?
Sure. Well, number one, it's the law. And it's the law because the intention is to keep people safe. We don't want to be responsible for bad things happening and people getting hurt. We also don't want to be responsible for people having negative experiences or doing things that they regret or feeling the next day like they were taken advantage of because they were overserved. All of those things that just are really bad for us long-term in terms of customer experience, let alone the legal implications. So we really want people to have a good time. We want them to remember us fondly. We want them to feel comfortable coming back and not feel embarrassed because they made some mistake or we didn't catch the signs that they didn't need that second glass of wine or that, second flight or whatever it is. So ultimately it's, one, it's the law. And we want to make sure that we are, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and that we're able to stay in business and stay insured and stay a good partner for our community. And that means, local government, local, community, taking care of our communities, taking care of the people that drink and then get into cars and all that kind of stuff. So we just want to be responsible, good stewards, and we want our guests to have a good time and remember us fondly.
Absolutely. And remember us is such a big deal. And we'll always have your back. It doesn't matter if they're a member, if it's, you know, if it's Chelsea's mom or Karina's sister or Peter's wife, Christy, it doesn't matter. We will always back you up if you need to stop service for someone. And we'll talk about ways we can do that like a friend, so that it's not, oh, you need to be cut off and now we're going to get into a confrontation. So we'll give you some tools. And that's that people skills thing too, to do it like you're doing it to a friend. And we'll talk about some different scenarios here in just a minute, but we will always, always back you up. So fines. This is the big one. This is the stuff that can put us out of business, and it's totally not fair, but this is it. First offenses. This is first offenses. Just for not having a valid service permit while serving or mixing drinks, 16 days, a suspended liquor license for the business. That's 4 tasting rooms once Vancouver opens that make, if you put an average, I mean, if it happens in the summertime, then the number is way bigger than this. But an average of $1,000 a day, that's like, we're talking about a huge, huge loss just shutting our doors. And we already experienced a lot of that during COVID, and how much that can hurt us if we have to shut our doors. And after so many offenses, we actually become uninsurable, which is, you know, we want to protect our family, protect our business. But it's so, so important that we, you know, it's not worth my job or my family or this company for you to have one more glass of wine ever.
Can I chime in just for a second on that as well?
Yes, Peter, please talk about that.
So we become uninsurable, and that is, I mean, first of all, insurance premiums will go up into the stratosphere, which we have already experienced. The next step is you become uninsurable, which means you literally have to go out of business because it is required to carry insurance in Oregon. So if we are not able to attain or get insurance, then we have to close down the business, period. There is no way around it. It's the reality, it's the law, and those are the consequences. And that's why it is so important to pay attention to this every single day, you know, 365 days, all the time, and we cannot lapse, and we have to be very diligent. And it may sound that we are kind of hammering this in, but literally, just as an example, 3-4 years ago, our insurance premium was 1/4 of what it is now. And we are talking huge numbers. Our insurance for the business is in the 6 figures. So it is substantial when it could have been or should be way less than that. So take this serious, please, and pay attention to what Shelley has to say, what all other panelists have to say. I really appreciate it, and please acknowledge the importance of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. So checking IDs, we talk about this a lot. The update to the Oregon and Washington IDs did happen a couple of years ago, so you should have seen these already, but they did move that date of birth to underneath the picture for Oregon, which was the update there. And just kind of an example of some other state licenses. State licenses now have all kinds of crazy stuff going on and holograms, and you know, if it doesn't look pretty darn fancy, you can tell that there's something wrong with it. And you can Google it. You can, you know, bring a manager in. If you get an ID that looks weird, if it's been through the washing machine 5 times and you can't read the date, if the picture isn't clear, if, you know, plastic is ripping off of the top, don't accept it. We absolutely cannot accept it. If you have a passport to back you up, ask for a passport, or that's it. That's all we do. You can't bring in, you know, 2 pieces of your mail and a letter from your mom. That's not how it works. We have to have a state issued ID with your name on it. So if you have any questions about that, and if you have any questions throughout this whole thing, just hang on to them. We'll have a question and answer thing at the end here. So just some examples of some IDs. If it doesn't look super fancy and it's got all kinds of holograms and national monuments and things going on it, then we need to take another look at it for sure. And making sure that it's not expired. Here's the deal. It doesn't matter if you're 50 years old. The law is about being 21 and that you have a valid ID. So passport or a state issued ID that is not expired. If your mom comes in, I know she's over 21, she doesn't have her ID on her, I can get in trouble. It's stupid, but that's how it goes. So please, please, please be aware of that. And when people do this to me all the time, well, they'll be like, oh, don't you believe that I'm over 21? Or like, come on, you know I'm of age. Like, yeah, but I don't know that you have a valid state ID. That's what I'm actually looking for. That's actually what matters there. Cool. So if you're not sure, just don't sell. These are the things. I'll just go over this really quickly. Some common signs of visible intoxication: the swaying, the staggering, difficulty standing. If you fall off your bar stool, we've had that happen a couple times. I think it happened recently in Bend. Someone just fell off their bar stool and they were like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm just clumsy, I'm not drunk. And we're like, well, I mean, that's one of those signs of things. Here's the thing. There are people out there that have disabilities and speech impediments, or maybe a limp. That is different. So what you actually have to do is talk to the person, have a conversation with them. If at the beginning, middle, and end, this is why it's so important that we go through that guest timeline and we're checking on our people, because then you can start to see what's normal and what's not normal that's coming from them. So the thing that I really like to look at, if I'm a little concerned about, well, maybe this person is impaired, is I look at how they handle their money. Because even if you are impaired, and sometimes, especially if you are, you will always handle your money with care. So if you have someone that's kind of just like reaching for money in pockets and it's crumpled up, or they can't find their ID or their credit card, how you handle your or present your money, cash or credit cards, is a great way to see if somebody really is struggling or impaired. But the only way that you can really tell is to talk to your people. I should tell a story about a little old man I used to wait on at the bar that would come in, have one glass of Riesling, and fall off of his stool, super hammered. And it was because he took medication that I didn't know about that he was taking before he would come in and have a glass of wine. So not only is it alcohol, we have to be really aware of what our guests are doing. Marijuana is legal now, prescription medication, other illegal drugs. I mean, if you're going to the bathroom every 5 seconds with a friend, like maybe look out for that. Like maybe something else is going on. If you're going out to your car a lot, that's all of the signs of how we acted in high school. Be aware of that stuff. You know, you've been there. And care, just be aware and care. That rhymes and is nice. It's lovely. Again, you don't have to know your customer's blood alcohol content. It's all about visible intoxication. And don't forget, you have to talk to your guests. Have conversations with them. That's the best part about us, is we're always trying to spark that conversation and get to know people. So we have a good timeline of what's going on. Other things to talk about: where have you been today? Oh, you've been to 9 wineries? That's good to know. I'll have people come in big parties and announce, we've been to 9 wineries today. And I'm like, cool. I'm not going to serve you any more alcohol. Like, that is a big indicator, especially now that Bend has got a lot more wineries popping up. You know, there's a lot of little wine bars and bars out in Seaside. I know some people will be like, I actually had a member who was like, we drank Bloody Marys in the car on the way here. Like, you have to really listen for those kinds of things. And they're not doing themselves any favors, but that's why it's so important. Have you had lunch? Have you had dinner? What other fun things are on your agenda today? Remind them that it's Oregon law. You can always blame it on Oregon law. I hate to be the party pooper. It's not my favorite part of my job, but I want to make sure that you actually make some good memories today and don't get sick. Start with water and snacks. Watch how they handle their money. Again, you can't make memories if you don't remember what happened. And notify your manager every time. Notify your manager and your coworkers. So this is a super important part. You have to let everybody know that somebody's been cut off, especially in the summertime when it gets busy. It's really easy for that person to go find another server or have their friend to go get them another drink or try to sneak it. And I've seen people do that. So make sure that everybody knows when someone's been cut off. Give them complimentary snacks. water, those are things that are always going to be that little buffer, and time. Those are always going to help you buffer a little bit. Even if we didn't serve them anything, we still care. If they come stumbling in from another place, we have to notify everybody, document what happened, always, always document. Evoke Winery will always buy a ride home for somebody. It's wonderful that we do that. So always, always offer a taxi for somebody within the town. Okay, we're not going to like taxi you back to Portland, but we'll get you to your hotel room safely, and remove the drink if possible and replace it with something else. Peter, do you have something to say about that?
Yes, I would like to also chime in that any incident and any time you cut anybody off in any of the tasting rooms, not only alert your manager, but at the same time, I'd like you guys to copy Corina and myself. I mean, myself for sure, you know, and I believe Corina would feel the same way. I would like to make that mandatory because I do not want to be surprised 2 months down the road when we get a letter. I need to know ASAP. If anybody was intoxicated, if we cut anybody off, if anybody misbehaved, if we had any issues that could trigger in any way or form consequences of legal consequences or anything like that. We need to know, we need to be prepared, and we need to handle it a certain way. And that's why it's so important to include me in any of those incidences, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. We will make a note of that and make sure that all of our managers are not only documenting in your logbook, but also forwarding that incident to Peter and Corina so that they know. That's a really good idea. I like that.
One other thing I was just gonna add is you mentioned even if you don't serve them, if they come stumbling in and you don't serve them anything at all, still note it. I do think that's a good point to remember because if you imagine a drunk person, you know, and they stumble in and they know that they went into Evoke Winery, but later somebody's asking them where they've been and what they've done, regardless of whether we've served them, they could say that they were at Evoke Winery. So we still want to record that just so that we know, yes, they did come in. We did not serve them anything. We noticed these signs as soon as they walked in the door. So I think that was a good point to make sure that it's all being documented.
Absolutely. That goes into our next little slide here. Every day, even if nothing happens, I see the logbooks in the tasting rooms all the time. You guys are really good at this. Just no incidents today with your initials. It just helps back us up if there's ever a question of something that happened. If we have nothing written down, we have nothing written down. But if we have something that says there were no incidents today, that actually backs us up. And it's not just, I want you to document everything, not just cutting somebody off. If you have any alcohol related incident, an angry guest, VIPs, even if we didn't serve them, guests trying to pour themselves wine. This doesn't happen as much anymore because we don't have people up at the bar, but back in the day, people would like try to grab the bottle and pour for themselves like this is their living room. I want you to feel like you're at home, but that's not allowed. Theft, attempted minor purchase, or any suspicious minor behavior, and review the log with your manager. Anyone else that was there that day or witnessed what happened needs to sign that, so that if something does come back, we can say, oh yeah, Sarah was the one that handled that incident, and Jason also was there as a witness. So anytime that you have a coworker or somebody with you that you've let know about the situation, have them sign that guest log as well. Communicate, communicate, communicate. So important when it comes to our people, because we care about our people so much. And it's the least fun part of the job, especially when it's members and people that we really care about. Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys handle cutting people off in Seaside?
Yeah, actually, I have a lot to say about this, especially when it comes to those members and staff. I know we all have those special members, like those people that are either like regular locals, or they're those members that go to like all the tasting rooms and all the events and stuff. And I'm sure every one of us can think of at least one member when I say that. And, you know, these are people that become more than members. They become kind of like our friends and our family, and we care about them and they care about us. And I think sometimes we think that that should mean that it's easier to cut those people off. But in my experience, it's usually a lot harder to cut those people off. And I actually had a pretty sticky situation in my tasting room in the last few months here. I definitely fell short in that good faith effort, providing that level of customer service and the experience that we should all provide to whether they're members or not, especially when it comes to that visible intoxication. Like Shelly already said, you can't make memories if you're too intoxicated to remember, and that's kind of what we're all about here. I definitely learned my lesson in this situation. Definitely things that I would have done differently. You know, here at Evoke, we are all about those honest conversations, and I think that's kind of at the base of what this should be done in all of these situations here with visible intoxication. And it should be pretty easy to see because the forefront of what we do is talking to our guests. So I think at the very first sign of visible intoxication, we need to start offering those snacks and water or more, because like I said, or Shelly said, it should be done at the very beginning. That's just good customer service and should set you up for success. You know, pulling the wine, that kind of thing, and then just having those honest conversations about why we are doing those things. I also think it's a good thing to remember that just because these members feel like they're friends doesn't mean that they can go out and drive. Like Shelly already said, even if they say they're not going to, people in those altered states do a lot of dumb things. We've all been there. I know we have. And we just need, you know, to protect ourselves and this company that we hold, you know, near and dear to us. So definitely those honest conversations, like, you know, like I could lose my job, I could get a fine, that kind of thing. But yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
And there's lots of other stuff that we can do too. And it's gonna happen. It's coming, you guys. No one was able to get married and now they can. So we're gonna have bachelor parties, birthday parties. There's no limit to sizes of groups right now, as far as I know. So like this is gonna start happening this summer and we really have to be aware of it because members and brides and birthday celebrators are the hardest people to cut off because they're having such a good time. We want to figure out how to do that without kind of ruining the party and making them feel good about that we actually do really care about them and want them to remember their bachelorette party or birthday and being with us. Jesse, do you want to talk a little bit about how you guys handle big groups and then maybe like just some other things that we can do to help people not get to that point? There's a lot of things we can do to help people just not even get to that point of over intoxication.
Totally, absolutely. And not to downplay, I mean, this is always a really tricky situation in the tasting rooms. You know, in theory, it should be easy to cut off club members or guests or things like that, but it's a lot harder than it's easier said than done, obviously. So a couple things that like for big groups, one of my like biggest tricks that I do, and Shelly's got it kind of listed in here, is if there's a bachelorette group, the Ben team has seen how I work with them. I like to set the stage when I get them. You know, as soon as they come in, I'm like, all right, guys, like, what's up? My name's Jesse. I'm gonna take care of you today, and really kind of lay out like, what do we got going on? Like, where are we going today? Is this our first stop? And like make it a fun thing. But that's me pulling all my data in the beginning and really being like, all right, so we got 6 people. We're gonna play it cool. We got you guys a spot in the back. You should be like on your own. You know, you should have you know, your own privacy or whatever it is to try to get on a good size and side of them and make sure like we're setting expectations very clearly in the beginning. And my biggest trick, it's not even a trick, but I guess my biggest tool that I've ever used is finding one person in the group and being buddies with them and
you know, whether that's the maid of honor or the sister or the mom, and we're like, okay, so we're starting to get a little wobbly here. You know, I see people wandering off or things like that. Let's rein it back in, or like being like, so where are you going next? You know, and being like, okay, sweet. If you guys want to get there by 3, I think we should maybe wrap this up, you know, have bottle purchases and figure out how we're gonna do the check. But really try to, you know, I try to like work my way in to be like there. And I'm like, oh, you know, if you're going here, let me give you a couple tips that I'm trying to help them. And to make that like very clear that my goal is to make sure that they make it the whole day and that they have fun and that they're safe. And that their experience at Evoke is memorable, like you said. So that's definitely something that I use a lot, is finding that one person. And that could be a big person in a big group or even in a smaller group, of really trying to help them be like, okay, like, do you see where I'm coming from? Like, I think we need to, it's time to cut ourselves off here. So yeah, those are probably like my favorite ones. And then in a couple of locations, for Ben, for example, we used to have there's like a free shuttle. I think it got stopped during COVID, but it's always like an easy option if you have resources around you in your local tasting rooms of free rides or taxis, or just knowledge of where a public transportation bus stop is and things like that, so that you're ready to give them options and make it easier for them. I feel like that's often the struggle when you're trying to talk someone out of driving or leaving, is that it's just easier to drive and then they don't have to call their mom or they get an Uber or anything like that. So I try to make the exit as easy as possible for them, and tell them, I've got your wine set up in the back. It's got a note. You can pick it up tomorrow. You can have your friend to pick it up tomorrow. Everything is taken care of. Your check's good, you know, and just have it easy for them, and kind of, you know, not make it less of a fight. So those are kind of my big ones there with the big groups, is really just setting the stage in the beginning and, you know, setting the expectations and making it feel like they know that you're kind of in control of the situation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jesse. I really like that. I want to make sure you get through the entire day, or let's make sure you get all the way through the day today.
Yeah.
Like, you need a designated person to just follow you around with a sandwich and a bottle of water in that situation, for sure. So that's awesome. Linda was asking if there are restrictions on group sizes in the tasting rooms. And as far as I know, there are not right now. Is that correct, Karina?
That is correct. There are no restrictions on group sizes that are mandated under COVID regulations. We're back to that kind of being normal. That being said, it's really a matter of like which tasting room they're wanting to visit and the size limitations within that tasting room. So you know, 8, 10, we can figure that out, but especially in Bend, they're going to, you know, need a heads up to figure out how to put that group in there. And then I would say over 10, we probably want to, we can always customize a private event experience, but I think over 10, really, we want to start thinking about using some of our private event space. We could probably accommodate larger groups than that in Seaside easily, and maybe at the Hood River tasting room, depending on where they want to be. But yeah, I would say over 10, we want to sort of evaluate if the space is going to work for them and if we can steer them to a more comfortable place.
Awesome. Thank you, Karina. Here's the only update. I actually follow the OLCC on Facebook. You can too if you want to get updates. Bartenders and servers are now required to report suspected sex trafficking. So we're talking about what we're grateful for at the beginning of this meeting. And I am so grateful that I don't work for a bar anymore. We're very lucky that we're in the wine industry and we don't necessarily get a lot of this kind of thing or any kind of shady clients. But this is the update from the OLCC this year. So if you know, we're all very aware of our people. And, you know, if you see a young lady with an older man and she seems really scared, if you see something, say something. That's it. And, oh, so I have this, I'll actually share this with you guys. Jack Schaefer is one of my favorite behavioral, he's like an ex-FBI agent. He's into behavioral science a lot. This guy gets like upgraded to first class every time he goes into the airport just because he's like so good with people. But he's had to handle some situations with cutting people off or escorting people off the plane. And some of his tips and tricks are, if things are escalating, basically remove the person from the crowd. So if you have somebody in front of you that's causing a problem because you cut them off, the best suggestion I can give you is to give them options, segregate them and give them options. Take them outside, take them around to a quiet corner, remove them from making a scene, and then give them options. Here's what can happen. Either we can ship this wine to you that you've already purchased because I can't let you leave with it. I'll bring you some snacks and water and you can continue to sit here and have a wonderful time, or I can call the police. So that's, if it gets to that extreme, that is what I recommend, is that you segregate that person and you give them options. You don't tell them it's my way or the highway. Doing that to somebody who is drunk and making a scene doesn't go very well. Segregate the person from the crowd, give them options if you're going to have somebody that's going to get really rowdy. And that's what Jack Schaefer suggests in this story about cutting people off on a plane. And I'll share that with you because he's got some fun little ways to de-escalate and deal with difficult people. So if you need help, tips, suggestions on dealing with difficult people, or you can always go get your manager. You can absolutely go get your manager or your diva or somebody else if you feel uncomfortable or someone is getting in your face. We got each other's back. And we don't need, there's no room for hate or anger anywhere in any of our tasting rooms. So the other thing that I suggest that you do every year as managers, and I think Angela is probably the only one that hasn't done this with her team yet, do a pouring contest. Make it fun. I'll do a little quiz after this too. We'll do some assembly points. We'll do some prizes. Make it fun. Practice pouring, because this is the other thing that you can do to help prevent someone from getting overserved, is making sure that your pour size is correct. So just lining up glasses, pour a taste, a glass, a taste, a glass, in different kinds of glassware, in decanters, measure it at the end, and see who has the most accurate pour size. And then you can kind of test yourself and gauge yourself if you are over serving. Sarah, I know that you've done this before. How did this go with your team last year?
My team last year was, I think, only Jason and Natalie, maybe Sarah Lee too. But it's super fun. Yeah, I basically just set up some glasses and I'm like, okay, you're gonna pour 2 tastes in this carafe. You're gonna pour 1 glass of wine in a club glass. You're gonna pour a taste in this glass or whatever. And then I just add up what the ounces should be and I put it in a measuring cup and see how far off they are. Pretty fun. So it's water. I don't pour wine. I do water and then I put food coloring in it. So to make it fun.
Yeah, and I know some tasting rooms also have different glassware and decanters with sand to see where the pour size should be.
Oh yes, I also have sand so we can see how much ounces each taste is, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4.
Jesse, do you have something else to say about that?
Yeah, I think it's, a lot of us here have transitioned from the kind of original tastings where we didn't have carafes and then gone into carafes, and it was definitely a learning curve with the carafes. And I think it's a reminder to like have fun with this pouring test, but also to hold each other accountable too. When you're in the tasting room, I've done it myself where I'm pouring a flight and then I'm like, what did I just do? I'm so used to pouring doubles that I poured a double on accident. And, Kennedy will be standing next to me and been like, is that for 1? And I'm like, no, it was supposed to be. So it's, it's that kind of holding your guys' selves accountable and even looking at it and asking a coworker or peer, like, does that look like it's pretty good? I know, Ben and I think Hood River all have their references to measuring on the crafts, but it's always like, sometimes it doesn't matter. It's one of those days where you're looking at it and you're like, where's the pour line again? I've poured probably 1,000 of these glasses, but for some reason, you have a brain fart or whatever it is. So don't be afraid to hold each other accountable, and it's never anything like personal when you're like, hey, that's looking a little hefty there. It's just it's a good reminder, and it's so easy to overpour in any type of glass that we have.
Absolutely. So whoever wins the pouring contest from each tasting room, or I mean, you can do it in the office too. Why not? What do they win? What should we give them, Jesse?
Ooh, oh man, put me on the spot. Ooh, I don't know. Let's see.
Jesse will write you a poem and
yeah, we'll tie it into the company party. I will serenade you. No, I don't know what I'll do.
Or like your favorite bottle of wine, or like one of the, maybe like a new piece of merch. There's a lot of really cool merch that's in.
Yeah,
we could do something like that. That'll be fun. Karina.
So have some Mount Hood Meadows lift ticket vouchers for things like this too that could be used. I know that's maybe not as exciting to people outside of Hood River, but I bet Kennedy would have fun skiing at Mount Hood. Boarding at Mount Hood. But yeah, so that's also an option if you guys want to use those for competitions.
Oh, fun. I love that. See, even though we have to sometimes talk about legal stuff, we'll try to make it as fun as possible and hook you guys up. If you have any questions right now, throw them up in the Q&A or in the chat there, and we'll give a few minutes for answering some questions. The other thing I recommend you guys do is check out that OLCC Facebook and practice cutting each other off. We used to do this and it was absolutely hilarious. One person act drunk, the other person cut them off. It actually is great role play to just practice what you're gonna say to somebody. You could even just do it in the mirror, like you're talking to a friend. Just like we do everything else. Like, listen, I want you to have a really good time today. The new thing that I've done, especially with members, this happened a couple of times, and you probably need to build rapport with people a little bit, but I went up to the birthday girl and I said, oh no, how did you get drunk? Oh no, what happened? Were you guys drinking before this? Oh my goodness, we have to make sure that you like get through the day today. Let me get you some snacks. Let me get you some water. You guys, we have to keep an eye on her. She's the special girl today. And it worked so well. It was nuts. I was literally like, oh no, what happened? How did you get drunk? Like, that's not the goal. And it was fun, and everybody was happy. So actually practice doing those things, and every situation is going to be different. Again, until you get some experience, you can always lean on your manager, you can lean on me, you can lean on Peter. And if you've got members and they're like, well, I'm going to call Shelly or I'm going to call Peter and let them know, like, go, let them, give me a call. I will always back you up. I'm not there. We trust you guys to make these judgment calls, and you know how important this kind of thing is to us. Okay, let's check the chat here. Oh, we already answered Linda's question. Thanks for being here, Linda. Oh. Okay. I want Jesse to be my voicemail recording if I win. That's what Dagger says. I like that.
I think that's a day. That gives me free reign. Just remember that, Dagger.
How would we go? Okay, Amanda Payne wants to know, how would we go about getting someone's taxi or Uber payment wise? So she's saying if we're going to get a taxi for somebody in the tasting room, I mean, for the most part, you've got a manager there that's got a credit card, or you've got an assistant manager that probably has a credit card. If not, I would say if you're comfortable handling it, we would reimburse you. Karina, what do you think? Or Jesse, what do you think?
I agree with if we are paying for a taxi and Uber, a manager should be notified way before someone getting into a vehicle. So if that's the case, if you're going to, the easiest would be the tasting room credit card. And then I think you're kind of spot on there with the reimbursement. I think so. Those are kind of our two options there. But definitely if we are getting a taxi for someone, a manager should have already been informed. And, I think all of our managers would, if they were close to in proximity to a tasting room, happy to swing by and help handle that situation.
We don't have Uber in Hood River, and I know that most of the Hood River team knows Matty Green, and he does pedicab, but also has a taxi. So that contact is a good contact. So maybe that's and I don't think Uber's in Seaside either. So that's a specific one to Bend, which is weird because you have to have, they won't, I don't think Uber drivers are even allowed to accept cash. So, and it's usually like you already have the credit card loaded in your app. So maybe like each tasting room could have a little cheat sheet of who their contacts would be for a local taxi option. And then, yeah, like the Uber thing, we would obviously be happy to reimburse, but that might be a little bit of a trickier one just because of the nature of like how you have to pay on that app. But
Yeah, Seaside doesn't have Uber, but we do have a taxi service here that is like $5 in town. And so it would, yeah, yeah. So that would be super easy. All the hotels are in that range, so.
Awesome. Yeah, if it was a taxi situation, you know, with communication with your manager, every tasting room has petty cash that they could pull from for that.
Awesome. Robert is also asking if this is a great question. If there's one or two VIPs, is it still okay to send wine away with somebody? So this is kind of a tricky one. It's really up to you, and that's why it's so important, I think, to talk to your guests, is that if you've got somebody in the group that is fine and is sober and is coherent, and you feel like it's okay for that person to take the wine with them, that's fine. I don't necessarily think you need to cut everybody off in a group if there's just a couple that are obviously intoxicated, but that's up to you. It's what you're comfortable with. If you feel like you can't really keep an eye on those people, because that's the hard part, is that if you cut, you know, one or two people off in a group and everyone else is still drinking, it's a lot easier for that person that got cut off to sneak a drink or have a drink of their friend's drink. So you really have to gauge the party, and it is up to you. If you want to cut everybody off in that group because you feel like you can't really trust them and they already have a couple of VIPs, then that is absolutely supported. Jesse, do you want to speak on that a little bit too?
Yeah, I also agree. It is a tricky situation. It's not black and white on that. I think you nailed it there though, Shelley. I have been in a situation where, like, you know, a group of 4 has come separate, you know, like 2 couples, and one of them came from somewhere before and was heavily intoxicated and the others were not. And they left separately and at separate times. And I was able to give the couple who was not leaving with them or in the same vehicle or anything like that their wine. But I mean, this is one of those situations that it's a case by case scenario, and definitely ruling on the side of caution of trying to not get any alcohol to leave with the group is probably the best practice.
Karina, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think you both sort of, it's like, it's a tough one because it's case by case. So just like you said, Shelley, sort of talking to people, feeling out the group. I'd say if you have that person that you've connected with, that's kind of like your ally in the big group, that seems to be pretty sober, level-headed, you can even express to them like, hey, listen, I'm not allowed to let alcohol leave with people who are intoxicated. So I'm like, if I, you know, like I'm trusting that you are going to be responsible with where this, you know, if I let you take these bottles, that, you know, you can have that honest conversation if you feel like you have that relationship with somebody in the group that is sober and level-headed. And err on the side of caution, like Jesse said, if it's questionable. But again, if you do, you know, like, let's say, because sometimes we have those bachelorette groups where there is a mom and mom's friends and the girls are intoxicated, but there's a couple of people that really aren't at all. They're just there kind of to help, you know, move them along and keep them fed and watered. But, you know, and so you can use those people to your advantage. And I think it would be okay in that situation. You've got a responsible person. They can be the one that's sort of, you know, taking the wine and making sure that it's all being handled responsibly, but still note it in the OLCC log. So then you can say clearly, like, you know, that you made these decisions. There was a sober person in the group and you talked directly to them, and that you made sure that nobody who was visibly intoxicated left with wine, and just record that in the log.
And another really good reason why it's so important to ask for and use people's names. If you actually have the name, if you've got the big group and you know the bride is Michelle, you can say, hey, it was the bride, she's Michelle, she's the one that was like hammered. I felt like her friend Karen was, you know, sober enough to take things. She was drinking water. Any details or things you can have, especially if you have a situation like that where 1 or 2 people are getting cut off in a larger group, and other people are doing fine. Super important to document. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I just have an example. I mean, I've had this happen. Last summer, we had a birthday group come in, and it was just the birthday girl that was intoxicated, and she was the one, they were members, and they had gotten a bottle of gay rosé, and I had noticed that she was visibly intoxicated almost immediately after giving her first glass, and she went outside, and I told her girlfriend, and we, like I said, we knew her name or whatever. I was like, listen, like, she can't have any more. We took her glass, and the girlfriend was like, yeah, you're probably right. And then she kept coming back in and like trying to drink off of her girlfriend's glass, and she would go back outside and was on the phone. And I was like, listen, if she keeps coming in and having more wine, like, I'm gonna have to cut all of you off. And they kind of understood. So, yeah, and definitely wrote it in the OLCC book.
I feel like I remember that day, and like her friends were totally fine. They were acting nice, and she was just like, who
Yeah,
knows?
definitely.
I really wanted to know what she was talking about on the phone because she was hammered.
Yep.
My goodness. Okay, team, any other questions? It looks like we don't have anything else up in the chat. And again, if you have more questions after this, or you need some advice on how to deal with difficult people or how to cut somebody off, I also will I'll send a little quiz after this and give you some prizes and some assembly points for answering questions. And then I'll also send you a little video from some bartenders with just some other tips about how to cut people off. You don't have to remove the drink, but we always try to. I like to do the swap. My favorite is to do the swap where we just do like a glass of water. Or I have this one club member, and he loves Cougar so much that he will get hammered off Cougar every time he comes in. And at one point, I just hand him a wine glass full of water, and he'll carry that thing around for hours and talk to everyone and have the best time of his life and be like, is this water? Like 2 hours later. And I'm like, yep, that's what yes, Mike, that is it. So that the swap for something else is always good. Putting food, goldfish, chocolate, other things in front of them, and just slowing your service a little bit if they're a little intoxicated. I also made a bachelorette party challenge checklist, which is super fun. We used it a couple of times in Seaside. Give the bachelorette parties something to do besides drink. Make them play games, give them challenges. I have the cutest little piece of paper, and they have to, you know, mark off their 4 or 5 challenges. They have a great time, and then they get a discount on wine. So it also promotes them to purchase. So if you need that, or you want, I'll print some off for the tasting rooms to have those little bachelorette party checklists. We had one bachelorette group in Seaside that, like, one of the things was propose to a stranger, and she ran out into the street in some guy's car and like tapped on his window and proposed to him in the middle of the street. It was hilarious. It was fun. It really gave them something to do besides drink. I also have one for birthday parties. So another little tool to help prevent people from even getting to that point. Give them something to do and something else to eat and drink besides alcohol. Peter, do you have anything else to add before we're done? Oh, you're on mute.
What happens when they say yes? Like in that case with the car guy.
The
I
proposal.
think he did said yes. We just celebrated. They had the he said yes sign,
Oh, okay.
picture.
No, okay. No, I don't. I think you guys covered it all. I think it's, I have nothing to add, except that I feel all this is super important. Thank you, Shelley, for doing this. Thank you everybody for chiming in and trying to, educate all of us and, bring things to our attention again. Otherwise, please keep at it. And be nice to each other.
And be nice to each other. We've got one more question. Are we allowing people to bring their own food into tasting rooms, especially for bachelorette and birthday parties? As far as I know, we always let people bring in food if they want to bring in food. Is that still the case, Jesse?
Yeah, that is definitely still the case. It's not something that I would say we promote necessarily, but we've definitely had people, especially like in Bend, because we're so close to the old mill, of walk over and grab a pizza and have it outside. But yeah, so the answer is yes, we do allow outside food, but not something that we're like, yeah, go grab anything. We try to present our small menu options to them first.
Especially groups with where it's like an occasion, like a bachelorette group or something. Sorry, I didn't realize the sun is so intense. They probably do want to bring a cake or some snacks, and they can do that, and we'll set them up in a room. Again, some of the tasting rooms are a little bit more conducive to that, like Hood River or Seaside, and they're welcome to do that. But again, that's a nice thing to know a heads up, so that the tasting room team knows that they're coming in with stuff and what to expect. And we do, just if somebody's asking to do that, we do ask that they clean up after themselves. We're not going to, if they're bringing in their own outside food, they also need to be responsible for cleaning it up after themselves. And if they want a larger charcuterie cheese plate, just give us a heads up. We can definitely put something together for a larger group, and that's maybe not on the menu, and accommodate 8 to 10 people or something like that with a big nice cheese charcuterie plate. So we can customize. I think it's just, again, like that communication and having a heads up.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add to that is, in some groups, it may be a good reminder to let them know that we do not have commercial kitchens. We've had a couple of things in Bend, where someone's been like, hey, I brought this, could you warm it up or throw it in the oven or slice it? And we were like, we've got forks, essentially. So, especially if it's a large group, bringing their own utensils, we do not have the space or capability for a lot of those larger items, or an oven or anything like that.
Outside fire pits do not double as barbecue grills.
Saying that because it has happened before.
It's not a hibachi grill, people. And don't let anyone ever bring an ice cream cake. Sorry, Sarah. We had someone that they were like, oh, we're going to bring a cake. And I was like, cool, no problem. And it was an ice cream cake. And their freezer is this big in Seaside. We had to empty it. There was just ice cream all over everything the next day. It was I
think we found ice cream for days, dripped on the side of a barrel.
Sounds like we all have a couple trauma stories from this.
Just make sure okay, what are you bringing? Clean up after yourself. But yes, outside food is allowed. That's fine. Anything else from the ladies? Sarah, Karina, Jesse, do you have anything else to say before we let everybody go? And thank you so much for getting up early, everyone. I appreciate you.
I think that's it. Just a reminder that you have a lot of resources. If you can't, maybe it's a Sunday or a Monday and you can't get a hold of your manager. I know Peter, Shelly, Karina, and I are all very, very happy to answer a phone call and either talk through a situation with you or anything like that. So.
Yeah, if you can't reach anybody, you can always reach out to me, and I will, doesn't matter which day it is, I check my phone and I will get back to anybody as soon as I possibly can and help out. So please do.
Same here. I'm usually available on the weekends. I generally will always answer my phone. So you've got lots of resources. Make sure you've got everyone on speed dial from the panel here. And thank you so much for being diligent and caring about people and making sure that everyone gets to the end of their day and actually it stays sober enough to make memories. I appreciate you.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.